It's Easter Sunday. That's why everyone's here, just so you know. Who's going to be here next Sunday? That's what I want to know. Give a little wave if you're going to be here next Sunday. You know, a spiritual practice is kind of like exercising and eating well and all the other things that, you know, when we do it just here and there, we just put our foot in the water. It helps and it's nice, right? You feel good that day at the gym. But if you want to build your muscles, if you want to build strength, you keep coming back, even when you don't think you need it, right? That's how we develop ourselves, and that's what unity is about. It's about practicing these principles. It's about showing up for ourselves and showing up for our world. And even when we think we don't need it for ourselves, it's like a recovery community where we show up to keep the doors open for someone else. One of my very favorite stories is from one of our elders who said on the first Sunday she came years and years and years ago, she was ready to lift off. She was ready to be done. And she walked in to this sanctuary on grounds here at Unity Village. And she was resurrected by the love in here, the teachings in here, the power in the practice. So I want to acknowledge everyone in our virtual sanctuary. We have an incredible team of leaders in our virtual sanctuary, and we have people that come together from around the world each Sunday online to join together. And so we see you. We're glad that you're here. And to everyone who's joining us on social media and whatever way they are, we feel you. We know that you're here. So happy Easter. Did you know that this story is your story? The Easter story is a beautiful story. It brings people together. It's also a brutal story, is it not? Do you feel it like that about life sometimes? That it is beautiful and incredible, and it's also brutal sometimes? So we have a great example to dive into each year for Easter. Not to just revisit a story that happened 2,000 years ago, but to revisit the story of our psyche, the story of our souls, the story of our lives, so that we can apply spiritual principles and tools and be about what we're here to be about. Souls, experiencing the human condition and bringing light to life. Today's conversation is about a most controversial figure, a radical rabbi. I kind of like to think of him as a hippie walking around town in flip-flops, reminding people of who they are. He brought a radically advanced God concept to the people of his time. But we're still wrestling with that radically progressive God concept today. It's still controversial what the master teacher taught. I and the Father are one. I and the source are one. Stop looking at me and what I'm doing and start looking at yourself. Start raising the consciousness here because you are here to be alive. You are here to be life expressing. And there is no separation, no distinction when we engage in the practice in what is ours to do. There is one will. A lot of people struggle with this, the will of God, my will. When we enter into that space and we know our I am nature, when we know who we are as spiritual beings, we know and trust that there is one will. And it is existent in the space of unity consciousness. In the space where there's no separation, no duality. When we know we might be in physical form, but we know that we are spiritual beings. So this radical God concept has come to us and has lasted so long because it's our story. The teachings of Jesus, the master teacher, are for each one of us. This story, this Easter week story, the crucifixion and the resurrection, leads us, if we get contemplative about it, to think about how we suffer. How do you suffer? How are you when you are betrayed? How do you show up when it feels like the world is against you? How do you show up when it feels like things are falling apart? When it feels like the good is crucified and the error is celebrated? How do you show up for that walk in your own life, in your own being? Is there war in your own being when there seems to be conflict, when there is chaos, when there is betrayal? Do we engage in war within ourselves? Or do we practice the path of the way shower? the Prince of Peace. Showing up with everything mindfully, faithfully, trusting the process and trusting the one power and one presence. Is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible to learn the practice of spiritual surrender and to learn how to support our own resurrection? Eric Butterworth is one of the greatest unity teachers, and he often talked about divine order. And divine order is not just that we look out at what's happening and we call it good and say, oh, it's all good, even when it looks bad, right? Think about the master teacher in this walk. The cross. Oh, great, sounds good, let's do it. Not so much, right? But standing in the middle of whatever we are going through, whatever is handed to us, whatever the world looks like, whatever our internal environment looks like, whatever our lives look like, standing in the middle of it and saying, divine order, I will be in harmony with that creates good. I will stand in the midst of this and be part of the rising up. I will not stand in the midst of this and make more error from error, make more disconnect from disconnect, add more anger, more fury, more fire to the pot of life. I will stand in the midst of whatever I might want to call bad, and I will say, let me bring the good, let me shine the light, let me awaken the truth. Because there is one power and one presence, God, the good omnipotence, and I am one with this life. Charles Fillmore, in an address on April 12, 1914, said this. He came to save us, talking about the master teacher. He came to save us from the limitation of our own minds. Everything is in the mind. Everything comes out of the mind. And when you find the power residing in your own mind, then you have begun the solution of life. Then you will arrive. If you follow your own mind to its ultimate, rise it to the Jesus Christ degree, you will find the solution of every problem that presents itself to you. Above all, you will find yourself. You will find yourself. That's what saints and sages throughout time have learned, embodied, experienced, and taught. That's the teaching of the Buddha. To find selflessness, every world religion and every deeply, truly mystical path has a different way, a different wording for expressing it, but it's all leading to the same thing. It's all leading to the same truth. That the I am nature is the way. That there is a spiritual practice that we can engage in to lift ourselves out of the limitations of the human condition and into the spiritual truth. And when we do that, there's a softness that comes over our lives, even in the hardest times. There is a shift that happens. There is a steadiness, even in the midst of turmoil. And there is a harmony, even in the midst of chaos. Deepak Chopra, one of today's kind of most known spiritual writers, talks about the Jesus Christ degree in the book, The Third Jesus. He said, Jesus exists in our own awareness at the level of God consciousness. He states that this is the Christ we cannot ignore. Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual mindfulness teacher in our time, says, I think if he lived nowadays, instead of kingdom, he would have said dimension. And heaven refers to a sense of vastness or spaciousness. So if we retranslate the words of Jesus into modern terms, it would be the dimension of spaciousness or vastness within you. Can we breathe into that? That there's a practice that we can take on that will expand our awareness of the dimension of vastness and spaciousness within us. So how is this for you? How is this Easter story? Are you taking it on? Are you lifting it up? Are you rising up within it? Charles Fillmore gave an address. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, for any of you that don't know, gave an address long ago, and I like to share this. I've shared it before. It's from the 1914 Easter sermon, but he talks about two different viewpoints from which we can see this story and which we can embrace this story. So let's travel back to 1914 for a moment. Right here in this space, on these grounds, the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is viewed and taught from two diametrically opposite standpoints. The first teaching, and the most popular, is that of the Orthodox Christian Church, that Jesus was the Son of God, that he was crucified, died, was resurrected, ascended into heaven, and sits at the right hand of the Father as one of the judges of men, and that his death was to save our souls. The other teaching is that of the unorthodox Christians, the mystics, those who see from the standpoint of logic and truth. They teach that Jesus was crucified, that he died, that life was put out of his body, but he had developed that power which resides in everyone until he resurrected that body, and that he refined that body until it was visible to the eye of the sense, but that it resides here in our midst, that it is the seed of a new life for all of those who believe in it, that is, who enter into it with faith, striving to make their consciousness its consciousness. Now, the two great viewpoints, Charles says, of these teachings, succinctly stated, is this. One teaches men, people, women, humans, how to die. The other teaches us how to live. Following this out, we would say to you, if you want to know how to die and go to heaven, take the first viewpoint. If you want to live and reap the rewards here and now of your efforts, study the second statement. Crucifixion, tomb time, and resurrection. This is part of the cycle of life. If you look at nature, we see the same cycle in nature, do we not? Crucifixion, a crossing out, a dying off of what no longer serves. Tomb time, the time of waiting, the time of slowing down, the time of silence, the time of nourishment. And resurrection, the time of rebirth, the time of life, the time of recognizing that everything that we attached to, everything we thought was important, we thought was real, we thought was sustaining us, is not needed and necessary as long as we know our true nature. That we are born again in each moment to the true life within us. That we can actually experience human loss, we can experience conditions that may feel like a crucifixion. But that does not limit in any way, shape, or form our true nature. So why the cross? Why was the master teacher crucified on a cross? The cross was reserved for the worst of criminals. It was humiliating. It was public. This demonstration serves us today by reminding us that there is nothing, there is no thing that spirit source cannot work through. There is no thing that we can go through in our lives that we cannot heal from, that we cannot stand within and resurrect and rise from. That's a story for today. That's a story for the experience of what it is to be human within each one of our hearts. and a story for the world around us, for how we show up together in community, in the world. Tomb time. Do you give yourself time? Do you have patience with the waiting in life? Time with stillness, with silence, with darkness, honoring times of darkness. Ooh, doesn't that feel kind of awful? Can we honor the process? It's part of the human condition. Do we have to keep fighting from it, pressing it away? Or can we instead develop a spiritual practice within ourselves of tomb time? And just recognize that when it comes to us, we don't have to be afraid of it. We can have faith in the tomb time and the process, what it brings to us, how it is essential to the resurrection. If you feel like you've been stuck in the crucifixion, consider the tomb time. It may be that we've been holding it back for ourselves. We don't like waiting. We don't like looking at chaos and standing in it saying, I will make good from even this. It's not a hope. It's not a prayer that's launched into the sky for someone else to do. It's not for the them that exists outside of us, but it's for each one of us to say through my mind, my emotions, my perception, my practice, I will make good from this. I will be the good in this. That is the God in this. Can we value this time? Can we trust this time? And when we experience the rebirth, can we recognize that part of that rebirth is because we rolled away the rock? Richard Rohr, a mindfulness teacher who comes from the Catholic tradition, said this: roll away the rock, revealing the true self. Behind all this rock of my ego, what is behind it? Up to now, he says, it's been common, with little skin off anyone's back, to intellectually argue or religiously believe that Jesus' physical body could really resurrect. That was much easier than to ask whether we could really change or resurrect. It got us off the hook. The hook of growing up, of taking the search for our true selves seriously. So how? How do we follow the great model, the great example? When they brought Jesus down, he lifted up. He took no one down with him. Instead, his crucifixion, and in his crucifixion, he lifted everyone up. He showed up in his character. His character was not moved by the experience that he had externally. It was not moved by the attack. It was not moved by the environment. It was not moved by the cross. The crossing out was crossing out of any illusion, crossing out of any error, crossing out of any separation, so that the rising could happen within. That's available to each one of us. But how are we when we feel beaten down, when we feel pulled down? Even the teaching of the master teacher in the midst of the worst betrayal, most horrific suffering, used his breath to offer words of peace. To remind us that even in the suffering, there is no need to blame. There is no resentment or regret to appropriate. There is nothing but compassion, a deep, radical inner peace and mindfulness, forgiveness and harmonizing, bringing forth and activating the absolute workings of grace as life lives itself in each moment. The grace of your source is sufficient. So what are the keys? What are the tools? What did we see as how to activate this practice? Non-attachment. Whew, not a little one. A daily practice, a moment-by-moment practice. Non-attachment, not my plan, but thy will. And not in the way that it's like, little me, how could I figure out my will versus God's will, but recognizing and stepping into the place where there is oneness. Of course that will. That's not hard to lean into, is it? The highest will. But in order to be there, we have to have non-attachment. The second key is non-grasping. Not holding on, not clinging to, not taking. How many of us, when we feel like we're going down, do we start grabbing at anything that could come down with us, right? It's like, yeah, let me just lash out right there. Let me just slash that. Woo! Who else can come down? I'm going down, right? Non-grasping. If you're falling off a tree, be trying to hold on, right? Hold on to anything and everything. But non-grasping is just letting go. Trusting that this moment, this present moment, is divinely designed for your awakening and for your rebirth. That there is something here, and not grasping at anything in the outer world, but grasping with open hands and open hearts to the inner world. Non-grasping. And the third is one that many of us are challenged by, and that's surrender. Who likes the idea of surrendering? Like, surrender to what? How much can I trust that I can surrender to you, to this, to that? No. In the human condition, we tend to be a bunch of control freaks, which is just really funny because we plop onto this planet, into this experience, without a guidebook, without a lot of resources as far as how to do this. So it's clear that we're out of control. I mean, we're spinning on a planet. We're all, we're not even, we think we're straight up and down, but we're really not. We're all just like your feet are stuck to a planet. Your feet are stuck to a ball. Just picture that for a moment. Your feet are stuck to a ball. That ball is moving. Literally above your head is outer space. There's a sun out there, a moon out there, a bunch of stars, galaxies beyond galaxies. And you are literally pinned to it by your toes. And we don't want to surrender. Friends, we've already surrendered. It's whether or not we want to get with the program. Non-attachment, non-grasping, surrender. Having faith, having peace, even in the midst of it, finding the eye of the storm. If you're challenged by that, you're challenged by the idea of surrender, if you feel like sometimes in your life you're in that crucifixion moment or in that tomb time and there's too much chaos and you don't know how to get out of it, just literally put yourself on one foot and just stand here and just remember that you are like hanging from a planet in the solar system. Maybe step up on your toes, just from the toes. And even that, you stay here, you stick here. Can we have faith? Richard Rohr said, the true self and its resurrection are always a threat. The resurrection of the Christ body, in the resurrection of the Christ body, we are not talking about the resuscitation of an old thing, but the raising up of what will always appear to be an utterly new thing. Resurrection is not about a man returning to his body nearly as much as a universal man leading us into a universal future. And by doing that, by making use of all of the past, we transform it. He said, Jesus is life. And his risen body says instead that the discovery of our own divine DNA is the only full and final meaning of being human. The true self is neither God nor human. The true self is both at the same time, and both are a total gift. Such a radical newness is threatening. Even now, it reveals itself in the oldest, truest, and deepest self that we are. I want to share with you a little bit from one of my favorite books. It's a Unity book by Sig Paulson, who used to be here at Unity Village Chapel years and years ago. In Your Power to Be, Sig says this: Jesus pulled the trigger that shot the anthropomorphic God out of the sky when he revealed that God is spirit, or universal creative energy, and that the kingdom or dwelling place of that spiritual energy is in man, and that man, when he seeks out and expresses that inner power, is destined to be the agency through which the world of the future is to be governed. It is finally dawning on many who are moving from believing in Jesus Christ to believing him, that the God power that is to rule any paradise of the future is now buried in man, awaiting his acceptance and expression of it. That's what the master teacher taught, right? Kept saying, there it is, there it is. He goes on to say, heaven is the paradise that will be brought into expression when I'm trying to translate all this man. But it's really hard. We'll try human. I don't know how to do it. Heaven is the paradise that will be brought into expression when human exercises the power of what it is created to be. It's going to be impossible. And the hell is the world of limitation, sickness, war, and misery, in which he struggles until he becomes fully conscious of his true estate. He goes on to say, it should be pretty obvious that there is no outer God who is about to yell, whoa, boys and girls, you've gone far enough. I am coming down to earth to take over and establish peace among you and among nations. The God who is to save humankind, if it is to be saved, is the divine potential within humanity itself. The celestial spark within each individual, or as St. Paul described it, Christ in you, your hope of glory, or as Jesus described it, the spirit of truth that is to lead man to all truths. Can you breathe into that? I mean, we're still asking someone to come do it for us, aren't we? Collectively, rather than recognizing our togetherness. Sig says, in man, the word or light or self becomes self-conscious, as it inevitably must, before its full potential can be realized and expressed. So this is for each of us. Each is to draw on the treasures available to and through the self of her being, and to give it unique and unduplicated expression, to give it personality. Far from getting herself out of the way, each person is to be the way the word becomes flesh. Or to phrase it another way, the light that shines in the world. He says, much inner conflict has risen from a misinterpretation of the instructions of Jesus to all who wanted to follow him. If anyone wishes to be a follower of mine, he must leave self behind. He must take up his cross and come with me. Whoever cares for his own safety is lost. But if a man will let himself be lost for my sake, he will find his true self. Matthew 16:24-25. To leave self behind, or as other translations say it, to deny himself, is to wipe out the sense of limitation that has kept humanity in bondage. It is to open a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape. To take up the cross and come with me is to stay on the job until the work of the obstacle elimination is finished. As Jesus points out, the one who is self-concerned, fearful for his own safety, is sunk. But the one who gives up her sense of limitation will find what she really is. Note that Jesus did not say, "Of myself, I am nothing." He understood the relationship of the self, the I am, to the universal. I and the Father are one. I and the Mother are one. I and the source are one. From John 10:30. Dr. Lanza translated it in this way: I and my Father are of one accord. The self and its creator are one. A unit of wholeness, a complete entity of self-expression. In a growing understanding of self, the individual expression and the universal are in tune. They are of one accord. Both join in singing the universal song of self-potential and self-expression. I am. Would you say I am with me together? I am. And so it is. Aldous Shanklin said, evolution halts or hastens in you. Which will it be? Let's prepare for a time of meditation. Give me this day my daily bread. Forgive me all my trespasses, and lead me not into dismay. But let me pray upon the highest hill. Let me know the beauty of thy will, and from it let me not stray, but deliver me from negativity. Baptize me in your majesty. Christen me with the love that is free. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. When I realize that we are one, and only with these eyes do I see. Thy word is heard from mountains high, in valleys low, through summer skies, in lands of war and lands where there is peace. Te Malkuta Nev Kadeshama Matolel Hewa Hela Watashbukta. From Catholic saints to Hindu names, Buddhist chants, hymns and refrains, bless all the paths our feet walk to be free. Bless all the paths our feet walk to be free. Bless all the paths our feet walk to be free. Baruch atah Adonai, Om Shanti El Shaddai, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Om deep breaths right where we are. Allowing ourselves to be so fully present to the breath, the present moment, the practice. Sweet Spirit, in my fullness I am known. The same force keeping the very planets in motion is active and at work in my life. Allow an expansion within me that will deepen my faith in this truth, so that I may surrender, that I may live my life as a great let go, without attachment, without grasping, heart wide open, mind wide open, hands wide open. Here I am. I am that. I am. There is no place to go to get more God. All Godness is right here, right now, self-existent. I couldn't be separate if I tried. Just like I can't take my little foot off this planet and fly into space. Even the very hairs on my head are counted. I am safe. This process of the human condition, the spiritual condition of unearthing, of chaos and harmonizing, of crucifixion, tomb time, and resurrection. I can be at peace with even this. I inhale and exhale, bringing my deepest intention and my heart's desire for this moment, my life, my world, our world, into the silence on this Resurrection Sunday. By the power of this practice, may all beings have freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know they are born blessed and here to be a blessing. May all beings know God as love and themselves as emanations of this love. As you choose, bringing the hands to the heart center and bowing to seal the practice. Namaste.